Hey there. If you are like me, you will know the struggle of trying to find a center pole and dealing with yarn barf. So I seriously watched about 40 videos on how to find the center pole, and I kind of took different points from all the videos I watched. Some of these were like even 10 years old videos, so pretty much like, I don't know, almost as old as YouTube. But in all these videos, there were different tips about what you can do to find the center pole. And so I thought we could grab a couple different yarns and check this out and see if it holds true. So the very first thing would be to identify which side you're doing your center pole out of. And I heard two different ways, and I'm going to go ahead and assume these are true, and unless someone can, prove it otherwise. But one of the things that was stated was that when you look at your label, oftentimes that the center pole will either be on the left side. This would be, if I was looking at it, the left side, or if the label goes this way, that it will be on the top side. Now, the one problem with this is going to be you really don't know if that's true, or if someone at the store has taken the label off and put it back on, or if you have, or anything like that. So that could be a little problematic just to go by that. The other thing I had seen was that if you look at the outside of the yarn, and you can see there's this strand right here, and this is from the outside. So if you were pulling from the outside, and then they tuck this into this side right here. Following a Jada and Stitches video, she says that if you have this outer side tucked into here, your center pole is going to come from this side, the opposite side right there. So I'm going to go ahead and operate by those standards right now. There was some controversy about whether or not to leave the ball band on. And I'm going to be honest, I get what they're saying, that the ball band helps keep the yarn in its shape and keeps it from getting all floppy and tangled. But in my experience, usually my yarn balls don't start getting real floppy and tangled until they're about halfway. So at that point, the ball band really isn't fitting, and I don't think it's really helping. When it's at a fuller size, I feel like it doesn't really do that anyway. So I'm not really in the school of thought that you have to leave this on. I have used like little plastic sleeves. They were vintage ones that I had thrifted, but I know you can get almost like, I don't know if it's like a neoprene fabric sleeves as well. I've seen people use like knee-high nylons to help keep your skeins in place. So all of those things are options if you feel like you don't like your skein of yarn getting so loosey-goosey. For right now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep that tail tucked in there, but I am going to remove that shortly. But I'm doing that just so I can keep my ends straight for the time being. Now, the next thing was to loosen up the center. So I've seen people, kind of squishing it. I've seen people, like there was a Lion Brand video where they were spanking it, but just kind of loosen that up in the center. I mean, it doesn't look as attractive, I will give you that. And then to kind of go in and stretch out those outer layers with your fingers and just make that a little bit larger. Again, just trying to get a little bit deeper in there and feel around, try to find more of the glob. It's hard to know though, it's hard to, you can kind of feel the layers a little bit on the outer wall there. So then, yeah, just trying to find, I can feel now where there is a glob in the center, but could that glob be smaller? I'm going to try to work it out to those outside walls just a little bit more. Now, at this point, I am going to go ahead and pull out the outer thing, because in the past, I have had trouble with when I'm doing a center pull, I have had trouble with this yarn getting like pulled up into the yarn and getting tangled. And then I'm like trying to pull the whole skein of yarn basically inside out. And I had seen several videos where people were like, just tuck it up into the ball band. And I can tell you from my experience that every time I do that, once you get going a little bit and it sinks down, that this outside yarn somehow, I mean, it just comes out of the ball band and somehow works its way up in there. So I am going to take it here and just get it long enough that I don't get confused, because I am going to come back to this. In full disclosure, I don't know if it makes a difference what type of yarn it is, because I actually did try filming this with a different skein of yarn. It was some Bambootiful from Hobby Lobby's Yarn Bee, and this did not work on it. I got more yarn barf than the skein. So I can see right here is the ultimate center of it, and it did kind of plop out. So I'm gonna keep that separate, and I am gonna be starting, I'm already using this yarn for a project, but I don't know if just like the density of it, the type of yarn, the way it was on the skein, if it was just too tight. I mean, it's really, you can see in here, like, yeah, I did a number on this one. This was pretty much like what you should not do. So I did go with a little bit looser yarn. I am going to go ahead and switch hands because I'm right-handed. And I'm going to go in here, and like I said, I've got it spread out kind of as much as possible, I feel like. And I'm going to go ahead, I've got a hold of some, so let's see if I totally mess it up again and have to scratch this whole video idea. Okay, there's a pretty decent amount, but it's not half the skein, so I'm ahead of the last time. Now, while we are right here, I want to address something very important that I learned about yarn barf in all of these videos. And I have definitely fallen for this in the past, where sometimes the yarn, you're pulling it out and you make things way harder, and you need to keep pulling until you just get one single strand. So if you're pulling it out and you're getting this glob right here, you keep pulling till it is just one strand. And then you can see this is separated a little bit, and I've got another one strand, so we can tell this part right here is the actual center and this was around it. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this separate. And before I do this, I'm going to take my original ball, and I'm going to take this outside working yarn here. It's not a working yarn, I don't know why I call it. I'm going to take this outside pull yarn, and I'm going to wrap it kind of loosely around the skein of yarn, and then I'm actually going to tie like a little loose knot here, because I don't want that getting pulled up into the skein. So I've got that secured. It's not going to get pulled in. It's not going to be part of that. I am going to follow the one section out to this glob of yarn barf, and this is pretty loose, so you can see that it is definitely falling apart. And I'm just going to start winding this first section of yarn barf. Like, you just want to address the one section that is, if you have multiple separate sections, just address the one that is closest to the skein of yarn and keep that other one separate. And I'm going to be honest, this probably would be a little bit easier if I had this like flat out on a table, but for filming purposes, I didn't want to do that. I don't have the equipment really where I can do like top-down filming. The ways that I've tried, I really have not liked it. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep winding up this section here. This is a little bit like fuzzier of a yarn, so there is a little bit of like a grab to it. I don't know if you can see where those two, I'm just, yeah, gonna do that. You know, not all yarn probably should be center pulled. I definitely shy away from it more with like grabbier type of yarns. Okay, so I got to the single spot of this original, and it actually kind of is in two sections. So again, I'm just going to address the one closest to my skein here. And this is coming apart nicely. So it was definitely wound a little bit looser, which helps. And it is a little bit thicker. I believe this is a 5 bulky. Yeah, so just my one little section here of yarn barf left, and I am going to get this all wound up into a ball to deal with that remaining yarn barf. I mean, in a way, I do feel like having the ball of yarn is very similar to just doing an outside pull, but since it's not the majority of the yarn, this will get used fairly quickly. Wouldn't it be nice if all yarns had the thing on the label? I know a lot of super savers do, where it tells you which side to pull from if you're doing a center pull. And I know there's different brands that do this, but the one that comes to my mind is Hirschner's, where in their worsted line, the center pull is sticking out, and it actually has a little center pull tag on it. I think that is the absolute best. I absolutely love that. So yeah, you can see I have got this started here, and I can go ahead and work from this little ball that I got from a yarn barf from my center pull. So that worked pretty well with the looser one. Like I said, complete disaster here with this Bambootiful. I don't know if this is one, I don't think I've ever seen on theirs where they say that you should not do a center pull, but I have seen different balls of yarn where they do say not to do a center pull. So I don't know if it was user error or if it was the way that was wound. But I watched about 40 different videos, and it didn't matter who had the channel, if they had a couple hundred subscribers or if they had over 1 million subscribers. It seems as though everyone pretty much equally fights with the center pull and the yarn barf. So if you are struggling with it, know that you're not alone. It doesn't mean that you have less skills than anybody else out there. It really doesn't. It could just mean that it is the type of yarn you're using or how it is spun and how tight it is. And that might be a good reason to, get one of those like yarn dolly, yarn butler things where you just stick your yarn down over the spool and you can pull from the outside if you're going to be at home. That might be a good idea so that you aren't left dealing with all of this, because this is going to be frustrating and I need to use this yarn. So that is a total bummer for me. I have enjoyed this little experiment here, and I hope any of these tips can help you, because I do feel that overall they did help me, even though that one didn't really work out that well. I really think that was my choice of yarn, so I'll be more mindful of that in the future. But as always, I appreciate you spending time with me and talking yarn with me. And if you have any other tips for dealing with yarn barf or the center pull, please put them down in the comments. And that way, if someone is searching, they can look through the comments and find those too. I post videos every Monday night and every Friday night. So I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.